I'd like to extend a huge warm welcome to Madeline Di Nonno, who's the CEO of the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media, which is the leading research-based non-profit that investigates representation of female characters in film and media. And today's focus is on innovation, and Madeline will be introducing an innovative new tool in this research and demonstrating it for the first time in Europe. So it's a real coup for us, and we're really honoured that it's going to be the first European testing of the Geena Davis Inclusion Quotient. For this, we've selected the top Irish film performing at the Irish box office for 2015 and 2016. So that's what we've chosen. So that's all from me. Thank you very much. We have a great event today, and looking forward to getting started. Madeline.
Good morning. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning. Can you hear me? Okay, good. So how many of you, I have a very loud New York voice, so I don't want to blow your eardrums this early in the morning. How many of you are familiar with the Geena Davis Institute? Everybody, just about everybody. Great. So we focus on research because Geena's a pretty smart person. She's very compulsive, obsessive, and when she digs her heels in, she really digs her heels in. And she decided to take a research approach when she noticed that there were very few female characters in actually what she was watching with her kid. So fast forward, and there's been a momentum building. We have people like yourselves, women in film and TV, all over the world that are starting to get into this gender and media issue. And research is very expensive, and it's very time-consuming, and we wanted more real-time data. So a few years ago, Google said, we wonder if computer science can help you do your research cheaper, better, deeper. So that's how this thing came about. So $1.2 million, and 2 years later, we have the Geena Davis Inclusion Quotient. We call it GDIQ. And what it allows us to do are a few key things. One is take a whole bunch of data. Number two, be able to cross-reference it, push out a lot of data in real time. So essentially, in the time it takes to run a movie, we can run a movie. Whereas previously, it could take 6 months to a year to run this kind of data with 120 grad students watching and coding and watching and coding and watching and coding. And also, what's revealing about this is when you think about unconscious gender bias, which is really what it is about, it really starts to unpack it in a way that the human eye can't really see. So that's what we're going to do. And then, so the first thing I'm going to show you, I kind of Rube Goldberg this presentation is. So I'm going to show you a demonstration of speaking time, and the video is going to play right away. But I'm sure you're very familiar with this movie, and what you're going to see is the male character is speaking in, I think it'll be gray, and then white is just blank, and then the female character is kind of in a peach color. So let's see if this works.
I couldn't do what I do without you. And I've been thinking about doing something special for you, so...
Good gravy, fine. Oh, that's...
You're a crazy cupcake!
So also what it does is you could see how it discerns the gender. So the blue box was for the male character and the green box is for the female character. So it automatically just plucks out the gender and then it starts to measure the speaking time. So this next one is actually going to show one of the things I don't have actually done yet, but one of the things is really important to us is crowd scenes, because that's the one thing that most people hadn't thought about. Everybody understands, well, there's only one female lead or co-leads, but no one had really thought about crowd scenes. So this is, this next slide, because the video is going to play, is a demonstration of how we're almost ready to release crowd scenes. So I'm going to go to the next one.
I told my mom.
I wanted to be a dental hygienist, a mother working 2 days a week.
So you see with all the little boxes, we're able to get crowd scenes, which traditionally has only been about 17% female. So now what I'm going to do is just talk to you about our first realm. So what we did is we looked at the top, this is U.S., the top 100 films of 2014 and the top 100 films of 2015. But what I'm going to focus on this morning is the 2015 films. And so the first thing we're going to look at is screen time. And so overall, in terms of all male characters appear on screen twice as often as female characters. And then if you look at it by leads, in films with male leads, male characters appear 3 times as female characters. So you could see the difference in terms of male and female leads. And then in terms of speaking time, it's kind of the same numbers. In films with male leads, male characters speak nearly 3 times as often as female characters. And then when you look at by leads, same thing. In films with, let me go back to that one. In films with male leads, male characters speak nearly 3 times as often. So the thought bubble is, how is it possible that all the second ADs shoot the same way? How is it possible across 200 of the largest grossing films in the United States, which you know, come over here, that everybody has the same point of view? So if you're an actor, and I've joked with Geena and actors that we're friends with, I said, well, you better really break down that script in a whole nother way. You better count every word, really break it down, and then you better make sure that camera's on you the whole time. I mean, that's really what it's about when you think about that. But the flip side, this is, so there's the social case. We all get the social case. But what about the business case? And this was really interesting. So of the top 100 films of 2015, the films that were led by female did 16% more at the box office. Look at these numbers. I mean, these are massive numbers. And then, let me just go to the next one. And then also films with male and female co-leads did almost 25% more at the box office. So there's a business imperative, and that's really, really important, because what we find is, as people are trying to sell films and try to get distribution and particularly try to sell it in the U.S. to an international market, there's still a tremendous amount of pushback from these buyers. And so if we can start to show this, and if this stays relevant, the idea that men won't watch women is bogus, and that's a myth. It's a myth. So it's really important that we're able to prove out these numbers. So now what we did is Rachel asked if we could run the tool with the 2 films. So let's go there. So this is Brooklyn, a film that I absolutely, absolutely loved. And what you can see is this is what we were able to run is screen time and speaking time for all of the characters. So this isn't broken down by character, but for all the characters. So essentially, it was fairly almost even, a little bit more on the speaking time with the female characters. And when you think about, in the beginning, she's living in a house, it's all female characters. And then it's a little bit later on where she gets into the relationship and gets ingratiated, into his family. So that it's a really positive, indication. And then And then the next film, we looked at Room, another phenomenal film. And clearly, because you have a female protagonist, it's really her and the son the whole time, except for at the end, you can see that it's screen time is, 70%, and then speaking time pretty much so is dominated, by her. So it just automatically can just, extract that. So we're really, really excited about that. Before I move on, just because we're a small group, does anyone have any questions about it? Cool. Yeah. Yes, it would. And then, so if you say, well, that doesn't add up to 100, it's because sometimes there's just no talking or there's nothing. So there's that, you have to account for kind of the nothing that's going on as well. And that's what makes, that's why we have to calibrate it. Is there a narrator? What is the voice of the narrator? And it was interesting because we were talking about animation, and we're also working on animation, and we're working on age, we're working on diversity, and a number of other things. And it's definitely a challenge because in animation you have different types of depths of field, and so it's been tricky. We are testing it. I mean, we'll probably roll that out next year. But animation has definitely been a big challenge for us. So the next group of slides I thought I would share with you is from a global study that we did where we looked at the 10 largest film markets around the world. And we looked at female characters, co-leads, and we looked at balanced casts. And really, just to make the point, I want you to look at the bottom. Look at the UK, US, UK, and US. So because there's so many US, UK collaborations, we had to create almost another market. And it's interesting, you look at the UK, almost 40% female characters, that looks pretty good. And then, you look at the US, and then you look at US, UK. So the US totally pulls down the UK completely. So for us, the question is, well, what happens when the United States gets into a market? Are we going to totally destroy, mess up China and a lot of other countries? Because what happens when U.S. money comes into a marketplace? So I just thought that was interesting to point out because you look at China with their leads, and even in Brazil and some of the other countries. So the next thing is some of the other data points we look at is hypersexualization. And essentially, look at these numbers. For the most part, female characters are 4 times as sexualized as male characters. So, and this was across all 10 countries, but then we kind of broke it down. And you can see the variety, of the numbers. And again, look at the UK, look at the US, and then look at US, UK. Once again, we just pull their numbers down. And you could see definitely a huge variance based on the countries. So it's very interesting. And in some countries, there's more sexualization, but then, for example, maybe language. It's interesting, certain countries, what language is acceptable. Like American swear words, say for Korea is okay, but not the Korean version of that in their own language. So there's a lot of variables by that. Let's see what this. So, whoops, I'm going to back up. So the other thing we look at is career. So this was across all of the countries. And because we think about if our children, and in particular young children, are consuming a lot of media, and they may not have the critical thinking skills. And if you think about role models, we were talking about that earlier, and how media can play a positive influence in maybe igniting a passion, for a girl to pursue a certain career. But when you look at these numbers, mean, look at the C-suites. It's almost 90%, male. When you look at politics, again, almost 90% male. And look at all of those categories: law, academia, medicine, sports even. And it's very interesting. Our partners at J. Walter Thompson recently ran some numbers, and they said that they did a study of 7,300 women around the world in 9 countries, and they found that 12 to 15% of them pursued a sport because of something that they saw in a film or TV. And the economic connection to that is women who play sports are 40% more employable. So there's an economic long tail to this, which we're diving into. And then, I mean, Dublin, Ireland is a huge tech epicenter in the world. And when you think about STEM, which has been a big deal for us in the United States, because we know by 2020, just in the U.S. alone, there'll be probably almost 2 million jobs that we can't fill at all because our children aren't pursuing STEM. And so the way we broke this out was life and physical science, which is your doctors. And we know women are coming out of medical school, they dominate it, for sure. They fall out of the pipeline, or they tend to choose more female-centric kind of fields. But when you think about computer science, 17%, engineering, math, other, we're not showing our girls or our boys that these are career options. And it has that very stereotypical geek, glasses, soda bottle, kind of, image that we're definitely trying to change. And so you think about, okay, this is what's happening on screen, but what's happening behind the camera? And this is across all those 11 markets. So it's essentially a 4-to-1 ratio of men to women. And as you know, as storytellers, you either write what you know, or, as I'm going to quote Peter Page, who's an actor and producer of right now he has a TV show called The Fosters on Freeform, which used to be ABC Family. Why they changed the name, I don't know. Or you write what you love. So if behind the camera, it's a 4-to-1 ratio, well, then, of course, you're not going to see a lot of female presence on screen. But what happens when women are in the driver's seat? Look at the numbers. So in the U.S., it's actually a 10% increase in on-screen roles. But across this international, it's about 6.8 to 7.5% of on-screen roles. So one of the solutions is we have to get more women in the pipeline, in behind the camera, as writers, directors, producers. So that's a really, really important thing to work on. And so we kind of keep it simple, and we were talking about this before, is you kind of have to check yourself, because it really is, God bless you. One more, Gesundheit. I can keep doing it in different languages. Look at the breakdowns. Look at the scripts. It was interesting. One of the first times when we presented years ago, the head of casting for a major movie studio was like this at the end of the presentation, and she said, we go through every script that we get here, and we think about, could this character be African American? Could this character be Asian? Could this character be American Indian? But we had never thought, could this character be female? And I think now, nearly 10 years later, people are starting to ask that question. But a few interesting stories. So last year, we did an event. It was with the Producers Guild, Directors Guild, Writers Guild West, and Google. And it was Geena, Peter Page, Shonda Rhimes, and I'm forgetting who else was on the panel. And Geena actually worked for Shonda Rhimes because she was on this TV show called Grey's Anatomy for a season. And Shonda had never thought about the background characters. And there's no one who does gender and diversity better in the United States than Shonda Rhimes. So after this panel, she actually went back through all of her shows and looked at the background characters and actually changed out a lot of characters from male to female. Another example from that very panel is, have any of you watched an American TV show called Empire? Okay. So one of the writers at the time was a woman by the name of Wendy Calhoun. She's now a showrunner on a different show. And this was season 2. And she happened to be in the audience. And she said, we were kicking around a new character. And in the writer's room, we called it Rich T. White Guy. And it was a venture capitalist. And she thought, I wonder if that venture capitalist could be female. So like any writer, like all of you, you ground whatever the characters are in reality. And she found binders full of female venture capitalists and went back into the writer's room and pitched it. And no one could refute it because she had tons and tons and tons of examples. And who's really familiar with the show? Does anyone want to guess who played that character? It was actually Marissa Tomei in season 2. So that was the character. Another example, when we were talking about animation, so a few years ago, Monsters University was directed by a guy by the name of Dan Scanlon. And for those you're all in the business, so you probably know it takes 3 to 5 years. Brave took 12 years, but 3 to 5 years for an animated movie to come out. So if we don't catch it right in the very beginning, if you're 3/4 of the way through the animations, not a lot of change you're going to be able to make. So we go up to Pixar, every other year. And he said, I remember when you were here 2 or 3 years ago. Well, I remember what you said about the background scenes. And I want you to go see my new movie, Monsters University, because I made sure it was 50% female. And he did, and he was able to do it because has anyone seen the movie? On a college campus, oodles and oodles and oodles of female characters throughout the whole movie. So that's another example. And then, has anyone watching Jessica Jones? So we're very close to Melissa Rosenberg, the showrunner. And she tells a funny story. She said, I tell my second AD in terms of setting up the scenes, whatever you're going to do the opposite. And then I know it'll be completely gender balanced. So those are just some of our suggestions. Whoops. And then, so people say, well, what's your impact? And so every couple of years, we'll do a survey of a few thousand industry executives who have either heard a presentation or been in a meeting with us. And we always get high figures in terms of, over 90% are going to use it or they're going to share it in their work. And we said, well, kind of what are you really doing with it? And 68% said, well, I changed 2 or more projects. And 41% said, well, I've changed 4 more projects. And we said, well, what did you do? And they said, well, I hired some female crew. I put some clothes on the character, made them less sexualized. I took some non-speaking characters, and I'll give you an example. So a few years ago, this was the first version. Sony Animation came out with a movie called Hotel Transylvania, and Michelle Madraka was the producer on the film. It was Happy Madison production, and by the time she heard us speak, they were deep, deep into production, and she thought, oh my goodness, what could I do? And has anyone seen the movies? So what she did is she tripled up the witches and the hags flying around just to put a lot more female presence. And then she was able to take one of the non-speaking characters, and there was a whole little scene with Count Dracula that they were able to do. So that's, another example of things. And then lastly, gave the female character a job. So, those are some of the things that we've changed. So next on the horizon for us, now that we have the tool, clearly crowd scenes, we're working on diversity, age, and then we'll get into more contextual things, what the relationships with. And we're going to start publishing on a more regular basis. So right now we're starting to work on 2016, as much of 2016 as possible. So that's kind of the future for us.